Thank you.
Thank you. Assistant. Well, welcome everybody to the Way of the Community Art Gallery. This is my exhibition, a tribute to my great-grandmother, Miriam Bridelia Soljak. It's called Signed Under Protest. And I first knew Miriam when I was a young teenager back in the 60s at family gatherings and reunions and things like that. But I was very inspired and impressed by her as a young teenager going up to Albert Park. When I saw her, and she could have been in her late 80s, on a soapbox in Albert Park giving a speech about world peace. And sort of around the corner from her was Tim Shadbolt, a shaggy, handsome, Tim Shadbolt back in the days, and he was talking about anti-Vietnam, Vietnam protests. And there she was, and she was basically an activist to the very end of her life. And her life began in 1879 when she was born in Thames in New Zealand. I think she was the sixth in the family of 8 children to Matthew Cummings, who was Irish. We have a photo of her mother here, Annie Cummings. I don't know if you can see that. And so Irish father and Scottish mother. So the boys were brought up Protestants and the girls were brought up Catholic. So that must have been very interesting family time. And she was a very bright student and was a student teacher at 17. And at 19, she was teaching in sole charge native schools.
19?
Yes,
wow.
At 19, Tolman native school. Yes, and she became friends with Ngāpui up north. We really appreciated her work with the children, and she was fluent in Te Reo over time and was able to relate and communicate really well with the parents, who actually wanted her to speak English to the children and for the children to learn English correctly. But she had huge respect for Maori culture and was a very good teacher to the Maori children. And she was out riding her horse one day with one of her students on horseback, and she had trouble with the girth strap under her saddle. So she got off the horse, and her student companion said, "Look out, miss, the the Austrians are coming." And so thundering through the Kauri forest were over here, the Soljak brothers, well, they were referred to as the Austrians, who had come out from Croatia, or they were called Dalmatians, to escape conscription into the Austrian army. Anyway, they stopped and saw Miriam was in distress there and helped her with her saddle, and that is where Miriam and Petar Soljak first met. And if you want to zoom in on handsome Petar, is that from there? They're all very, very handsome men.
Is Petar there?
And this one here is, yes, Petar Soljak. And this is the photograph of them, where they're all very suited up and looking, very formal. And it was taken in 1908, and I believe that must have been the wedding, because in 1908 in Rotorua, Miriam and Petar Soljak were married. And then she discovered to her horror that by marrying a foreign man, she lost her New Zealand citizenship, or British nationality as it was called back then.
Right.
So she went on a campaign for the rest of her life, among many other issues, but to change that law, because men could marry a foreign woman and they still kept their nationality. There's no problem. This is a painting here of working with the children in the native schools, and she knew all the words to all the Gilbert and Sullivan musicals. So I wrote a little bit. So the merry men of just like. You hear that one?
Yeah.
I don't know all the words, but yes, she grew to have a great understanding of the children, and also Maori children coming into the city and what that was doing to them. And and I've just finished, I'll grab this. We'll swing over here now, but it's taken me almost a week to, I guess, transcribe. Well, you can see your letter to the editor, which is in that writing, which is very hard to sort of read.
It's a long letter
but
too.
She is, the actual position of the Maori in contemporary New Zealand life has not yet been difficult. We Pākehās have become so accustomed to saying, usually without thinking, that the Maori have perfect equality. This assertion has been carried around the world by the uninformed and credulous till it has become an established falsity. So it's fascinating, and I hope I've got most of the words right, but I'm still working on it actually. So I'm putting that out there for everyone to see. I won't read the whole thing, but if you do come into the gallery, you can see all this. So what I attempted to do was show, if you will, like snapshots of her life, and mainly based on photos that I had, and then stories I was told in imagination. Like, for example, this obviously was taken that's when she got her teaching certificate, and that's a rather beautiful photo of her, and then I gave my own interpretation. And this one came just from a story that I know, from her writing, that is the way she met her husband. And I used, so it's acrylics, and then I printed on tissue paper some different sort of foliage and things, and so there's that is applied, that is application. Yes, and then there's a bit of sort of application here. And this was again imagination, and then from one photo actually here is of her in her classroom. If you can zoom in on this, which is very interesting because it's taken in 1917, but it says open air room. Now there was a big, that's her back there, there's the famous tie that she used to wear. But you can notice, if you look really carefully, most of the children have bare feet.
Right.
So it's a mixture of Māori and Pākehā children in the country. And the open air, I was confused what that was about, but it was very important to keep the rooms airy because there was polio, and TB and things like that. So they were protecting the children. And what's fascinating in her writing here, and she said that a lot of the children lived far away from school, so they would ride horses. And she said that the parents made little huts for the children around the schoolhouse, and they actually lived in the huts. And then the fathers would bring in huge sacks of kumara, potatoes and pumpkin to help pay for their board.
Wow.
And there was also a boarding house close to the school where some of them stayed, but the idea that these little primary school children were living in huts is quite amazing, and then they would go home on the holidays.
Wow, so
yes,
like a boarding school but in a hut,
well,
sort of?
Yes, sort of, I suppose. It just is, I just thought that was incredible.
Yeah.
And then, so she was really moved to be really active about that law, about losing your nationality, when her last child, this is Paul Soljak, was born in the Tauranga hospital, and she was refused a stay, the normal stay of a week or 8 days, because of her alien status, even though she was a New Zealand-born woman.
Wow.
And here, every time she and Peter and the family moved, which was a lot, they had to always sign in the certificate of registration of alien, and she really objected. There she is, that's her name there, and that's her signature there. But if you look with a magnifying glass, you can see it says certify that this applicant has signed under protest. So
right.
she refused to sign it at one stage and was going to be arrested. And so this is what this painting here is showing. She refused to sign it, but she would have been arrested, so she did sign it.
Right.
But then she took her cause to England when she was in her 50s in 1936. This is actually her picture of her new passport, photograph of her here in 1936.
And that's her there?
And that's her there in her 50s. And she sailed by herself on a big steamship called the MS Remuera from Auckland to London in 1936. And so this is her journal that she started on that trip. And it's a really sort of sweet little part here where she says Paul, that's her son,
Yeah.
who was grown, and Grace, that's my grandmother, and children, and that would be my mother and her brother, were on the wharf in the heavy rain, came aboard to say goodbye. Dismal scene, few wet streamers soon taken by the wind. I just love that. It's just quite poetic. So she went to England, and so this is my painting here, which has a red dot on it. Yay! From the the photograph and the passport. But I love the fact that she had lace. So I tried to recreate that and her hat.
Yeah.
A little bit of glamour, because a lot of times you see her very serious, and thought that was a little touch of glamour with the lace. The net on
The
her
net,
hat
yeah.
there. And so while she was there, this is okay, while she was there, she was able to address I didn't get a photo of the actual ship that she went on. It's marvellous what you can do with computers. So that's the actual
Oh, I
boat,
see.
the MS Remuera there.
Wow.
And her famous statement, if the housework's all done, dear, it's a sign you're neglecting the movement. So funny. Anyway, so she gave, in 1937, to the conference of the British Commonwealth League, which was an influential women's magazine, she described the plight of New Zealand women losing their citizenship after marrying foreign men. And the same law was never applied to New Zealand men. So this helped stir interest in this being a very unfair law.
Situation,
And
yeah.
eventually it was changed. It did still take quite a few years after this. And then while she was there, she went to the Hyde Park May Day, which still goes on today, a very famous place to speak, and usually very left and socialist. And she was walking, there's a photo here you can see that I got that painting idea from, a little tiny little photo there. She just looks very proud and victorious, if you can see it. That's her own little photo book.
Yep.
And then over there you can see there's like banners of Stalin.
Oh, yeah, look
really
at
quite
that.
Radical socialist.
Yeah.
In the parade, socialist leaders and things. So but she was able to give her speech and her point of view. And actually we have some books from the left club. You want to show those? Over here, this, so the Left Book Club was a publication company which ended in the 1940s. And it was
Wow.
more of like a socialist book club, really. So it's interesting that she was, in the photo, it looks like she's marching with them. I don't know, but I thought that was appropriate. That she would be like marching with them.
And you're right.
And the end of World War I saw the demise of the British Nationality Act. That was, but it wasn't until Miriam's, even after she divorced Peter, which is very sad, but because he had so much trouble getting work and had to always leave and go away and get work, and I think and her having 7 children, it just put a terrible strain on
7
the marriage.
kids.
Yes, and you can see. I'll bring you over to one last little detail over here. So here it is. I, Miriam Bridelia Soljak of Auckland, former wife, now divorced, of Petar Soljak, who at the time of marriage was a subject of Austria, and after 1918 became a subject of Yugoslavia. So she wanted to retain, while in New Zealand, the rights of a British subject. But that was in 41. It wasn't until 1946 that she actually got her nationality back. Or it's called British nationality.
1946.
So it was from 1908 to 1946 that she was considered an alien, resident alien. And there's this here is quite fascinating. She's been in a lot of New Zealand history books, particularly about women in history. This one just came out a few years ago, A History of New Zealand Women by Barbara Brooks, and it talks about Miriam Soljak protested in the pages of Women Today that legislation showed the general disregard of claims of women to equal consideration in legislation. So this was about the Social Security Act. So she was an activist about things that concerned her, but also that she saw concerning women and children, and also she objected to the military training that was going on in schools. You know, I can remember that, where mostly boys marched around.
Marching.
You probably do know that stuff. It was still happening in the 50s, where they were being marched around like little armies as part of school training.
We had to march at assembly outside.
Well,
to
the same in a way. And
yeah.
they have, you know, blaring speeches
The music.
with, you know, army songs and that. And one, in closing, this is bringing it a little bit up to date, but here is one of her last reunions. There's Miriam there. She would probably be be in her early. She died at 91, so I believe she'd be like close to 90 there. And and here's all her descendants. That's my mother there. It's a bit faded out, and my younger sister's up there. I think I was in America at that time.
Okay.
But 1, 2, 3, 4. Fifth from the left is little Sean Fitzpatrick, who was, you know, obviously people that follow the All Blacks, was an All Black captain for many years. So he's a direct descendant there.
Look at him there.
Yes. So.
Fantastic.
Any questions? Do we take questions?
No, but I've got.
Well, I can say a little bit about the process, because when I first started.
Yes, I was just going to say the process. Someone asked.
4 years ago.
Yep.
To be honest, I'm very new to painting. I've done music most of my life, but painting is something I started about 5 years ago. Although I've always loved art. When I was a young girl, about 9 years old, I was really into art, and I was making really huge things, and one piece was held up in front of the whole of the Standard 4 classes, an example of what we don't want to see coming out of this classroom.
Aww.
And I was just so ashamed. I can remember the shame of it. And so the girl next to me was drawing a horse, so I started drawing a horse, and then that's about all I could do was horses for about a year. And then I virtually kind of gave up. But since the last 5 years, I've gotten I'm very passionate about it, and I'm loving it. I'm taking classes at the Brown School of Art. And I'm learning new things like, you know, background textures. Like that was done in black gesso.
Right.
And you stumble it with a roller to get these sort of interesting backgrounds. And then if you put colour over the top, you get lovely texture. I didn't know about any of that. So yes.
It's a journey in time as well, isn't it?
These are earlier. So what's it been on this one? I think it's probably 2002.
How long? So how long has it taken to do this body of work? All of these.
Well, I mean, I haven't only been working on this, but since 4 years.
4 years.
But I mean, not like been labouring at it for 4 years.
No, but
there's
it's
other things as well. But there is quite a distinctive difference between these and those are the most recent works I've done over
well, that's
here.
really interesting because
So I've sort of progressed. I
fantastic.
kind of like where it's going. I want to get more into abstract now, but this is it. And someone said, "Oh, we love how you got that lace texture." I said, "Well, that actually is lace."
Yeah.
It's quite
Fantastic.
And this little son here actually was injured in the Second World War, and Miriam basically finished a lot of the work that she was doing and to take care of her injured son.
Oh, right.
So that's why she was always aware of what was happening to soldiers returning home from war.
Yeah.
And she campaigned for peace.
Yeah.
strongly towards the end.
Yeah. So this family photo, latest, this most, well, I guess you were saying it was probably one of the last ones.
Yes, that's the last one where she was together with the family, and we still reunite together. That's a reunion without her.
Sure.
That would be more.
And is this all up here in Auckland?
Yes, it's all up here in Auckland. That's actually Roseanne, my cousin, Roseanne Mayo, right there, sitting down with the little kids. And that's my mother there.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's a fascinating story. I think she was a hugely courageous woman. She did lots of writing. This one is called A Maori Heroine, which is fascinating.
Sure, is a film or a book?
Oh,
or...
that is a film right there. And then, of course, she was in the forerunner of Women in the Labour Party.
Okay.
The history of the Auckland Women's branch of the New Zealand Labour Party from 25 to 75. And I'm reading discovering lots about her in the archives of the National Library.
Yeah.
And she actually left the Labour Party at one point because she decided not enough was being accomplished, and she got very frustrated with all the committee meetings. And so she left, but I think eventually she came back.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Katy. That's amazing.
You come down and have a look
Yeah.
at this show. It's until the 18th of October.
Great. And we'll hopefully do another one of these in a couple of weeks before it finishes.
Okay.
And another song.
I'll have a different song over there too.
Yeah.
Okay, next time.
Lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you, everybody.